I'm awake. I'm awake.
What's up, guys? I'm just some dude that plays video games, and today I'm talking World of Warcraft. I'm doing something a little different today. I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at one of the 3 Ragefire Chasm runs that I tanked, just to assess my performance because I like to watch myself in a video game. Like a proper athlete, it's helpful to take a look back at your past performances if you're trying to improve your gameplay. So my goal is to identify what I did well, what I didn't do so well, and how to approach it differently next time. So, if you're new to tanking or just would like some pointers here and there, hopefully this is helpful. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so we're going to be watching this at 2 times speed just for sake of time. And the first thing that I'd like to highlight is I really like this group comp, at least as a tank. If you're not really sure how ranged threat works in World of Warcraft, there's a strange interaction with the threat table where, when generating threat at ranged, a certain percent of it is actually hidden from the aggro table. Now, when you go into range of that target or that target comes into range of you, that threat is no longer hidden and becomes active, which can alter the current target that the mob is aggroing onto. So with ranged DPS, you generally have a little bit more of a buffer on your threat lead, assuming you can keep the mob at ranged. Now, early in the gameplay, you're not going to have a ton of tools available to you, so a lot of the time you're just going to be auto-attacking and casting Maul when available. You will have Demoralizing Roar as well, which is only something I typically use on larger packs or boss packs. The Rage on single pulls is better used on Maul to establish a dominating threat lead, or to just pull it for the next pull. Additionally, you'll notice we have Bash on our bar, so we'll be able to do some interrupts on spellcasting, or to stun a mob in place if it's trying to get away from us here. Now, one of the mistakes I make early on is mentioning to the group that I'm not going to be marking targets so much, but I do ask them to generally focus on the same target and to always target the caster mobs first. Now, what I probably should have done is just taken the time to actually mark the mobs, but I was feeling lazy, didn't really want to make a mob targeting marking macro, so I just, asked the group to be smart. That was my first mistake. Now you'll notice as we go into some of these bigger pulls that have Shaman, I notice the hunter is pulling trogs off of me and not focusing on the caster. So I just mention again Shaman first, and that's something I'll have to mention a couple more times throughout the run. So again, I should have probably just taken the time to do marks and to be a little bit more concise and clear with my instructions to the group. Now as we go into this next pack, I should have noticed right away that the hunter put his hunter's mark on one of the trogs and not the shaman, which would have indicated that he was going to target the trog first. So as I go in, I get one hit on the trog and then try to establish a nice lead on the shaman before the trog is summarily ripped right away. So I say a second time, shaman first, please. A couple of things you'll notice throughout my play is that I'm popping out of bear form to cast Regrowth and Rejuvenation on myself before certain pulls. That's mostly helpful on larger pulls or mobs that will hit especially hard, such as a boss. In more situations, I would prefer to have some rage pooled beforehand if that's an option. So I don't often pop out of bear form, but occasionally I will, and that little bit of healing serves a couple of purposes. Not only will it keep you most of the way topped off in the early parts of the pull, it'll also prevent the healer from needing to put a heal on you and rip snap threat off of any of the mobs. And that little bit of healing as it ticks on you will also provide you with a small amount of snap threat. But like I said, I usually prefer to preserve my rage that I pulled up, which is, as you can see there, dumped when you break out of bear form, leaving you back at 0 when going back into shapeshift. Now this is where probably I have our sloppiest pull of the run. I've already mentioned twice that I prefer everyone to target the shaman first. Again, you can see that the trog is the one that is marked, so after only a few seconds of combat, it's ripped away, and out of frustration, I just let the hunter tank that mob for a few seconds reminding him a third time to please target the shaman first. Now this was done kind of out of a little bit of tilt because I had already mentioned it twice and was having difficulty holding the mobs as it is because I'm not the best tank to begin with. So that wasn't the wisest move to let him get smacked around, but I wanted to teach him a little bit of a lesson in that moment. There's also a not so fun pull later on from the hunter that you'll see, so I think we're just probably dealing with a relatively new player to the game. And that's okay, I just should have identified that earlier, and again been a little bit more clear and concise with my instructions. After this pull, I healed myself. What I also did was accidentally clicked the NPC on the floor, which broke my bear form and left me in kind of a bad position at the beginning of the pull. I didn't identify that right away in this playthrough, so I did it again the next run, and it kind of messed me up a little bit, so just be mindful. When trying to talk to NPCs in form, you'll end up getting shifted back into caster form because you can't talk to people as a bear. So yeah, don't do that. Don't be bad like me. Now at this level, we don't have Feral Fairy Fire yet, so we don't really have a way to pull mobs at a range. So occasionally you'll see me pulling mobs closer with Moonfire before going back into bear form. But in a place like Ragefire Chasm, you can pretty safely do single pulls without having to do Moonfire to pull them into you. Since we make our way up, you'll also notice I use Enrage a lot in between pulls, just to preserve some of that pooled rage, so I can instantly open with a Maul and or Demoralizing Roar or whatever else I need to guarantee I hold aggro at the beginning of the pull. As we make our way through the Molten Elementals, there is a patrol that I was somewhat unaware of, so I didn't really keep an eye out for him and found myself in kind of an awkward position when he ended up coming up the ramp here. So generally it's safer to just pull mobs back and away so that you can avoid butt pulling things like that. Ended up being just fine because we were almost, the target we were on was almost dead anyways. But again, just going one by one, keeping it simple. At this level, we really don't have a lot of AoE anyhow, so just keeping it slow and steady and consistently moving is the most efficient way to move through. Now with Taunt, it forces the target to attack you for 3 seconds, but it doesn't alter the aggro table beyond that. So if you taunted a target and haven't subsequently attacked that target to generate additional threat, it's going to go right back to whatever it was attacking beforehand. So make sure if a target gets away from you and you taunt it back, get off at least a couple of hits on it to reestablish threat at the top. As we get into the Orc area here, this is where we'll be unable to avoid multi-pulls. So most of the pulls are going to be 2 to 3 mobs, sometimes with a minion as well. Best way to keep them all grouped up and keep them on you is to try and line of sight to a corner. So you'll see I've healed myself over time to have a little bit of snap threat. Then I pulled them back to a corner where I can try to get all of them in one place and tab target my attacks, continuing to establish that threat lead on each of them. Before you're getting to this boss here, you're going to notice a couple of patrols coming through, one of which comes behind me now, the other of which will come up the ramp. That one we don't end up waiting for because I have some rage, so as soon as my healer is full mana, I go in to establish a nice threat lead, expecting the patrol to come along in the pull as well. You can see the mage got the first hit there, which made it a little bit of awkward getting established, but eventually we get back at the top of the threat meter. Of course my DPS is kind of splitting their damage a little bit, but they drop a pretty poog cape for me, so that's nice. Now this next easy pull goes pretty smoothly. But as we get into the following pool, Mr. Hunter does Hunter things, and it gets a little bit chaotic for me. Again, pulling them back with Moonfire and trying to line of sight them using the crest of the hill. You'll constantly want to tab between the targets you're attacking to make sure that you've established a dominant threat lead on each of the targets. And keep an eye on that threat meter, which I placed in kind of an awkward position. It's another mistake that I've made in this run, and you'll notice in subsequent runs I have it placed in a much more ideal location to keep my eyes on it at all times. So as the hunter pulls this pack with the pet, mobs end up running all over the damn place. I'm having difficulty getting hits in at all of them. But I'm able to mostly pick the mobs back up. The healer isn't too upset. And at the end of the day, we killed them. So his friend mentioned he did yell at him for being a dum-dum, so I won't pile on. Mostly I'm just frustrated because I'm not a good tank myself, so people contributing to my poor tanking is not ideal. Again, for some of these bigger pulls, I'm going in with regrowth and rejuvenation already rolling, which makes it a little bit more difficult to establish a good threat lead on all of these targets and prevent them from running away. But that little bit of snap threat from the healing over time was all that I really needed, and I was able to keep them mostly in place there. This is about where you can see me doing some heavy breathing because I'm getting stressed out as we get to the climax of the dungeon here. Last two bosses will be at the end of this wing and the upper ramp, respectively. At this point, just a couple of more 2 and 3 packs until the penultimate boss of the dungeon run. So on this last pull, I'll pull a little bit of rage on the last target, preserve that rage with enrage as soon as combat's over, giving my healer some time to drink, and making sure I have a nice healthy rage pool to open with. I'm gonna get some mauls on the 2 adds right away so that they're less likely to get ripped off. Then I switch to the boss to try and establish a really solid threat lead. Boss goes down pretty easy. Mobs mostly stay on me. Overall, pretty smooth boss pull. Ooh, somebody must have leveled there. The healer noticed he let me get a little bit low, but I wasn't spooked because he had been doing a good job for the entirety of the run so far. I pull this unnecessary pack, but hey, it drops a shadow gem, so alright. Now at this point, I refused to go up the shortcut there because I thought that there was lava in the pocket next to it, and I wasn't risking myself to lava. So we go the long way around and pull a couple of additional mobs that we didn't necessarily have to take, but in hardcore, it's better to play it safe. Getting burnt to a crisp in lava is probably one of the more embarrassing ways to go out. Just a couple more 2 packs, a couple more 3 packs, and we're to the final boss up here. Overall, things are going pretty smoothly. This next pack at the top of the ramp, though, is probably one of the trickier pulls in the dungeon. Reason being, it's a little bit more difficult to line of sight the caster. So instead I go in, get a couple of mauls off on the adds, and then try to plant myself on the caster without body pulling the other mobs in the area. This mostly goes okay, but as you can see, the melee adds end up getting ripped off me. Then I lose aggro on the caster ad. Could have gone a little bit smoother. What I probably should have done is just aggroed them from afar and run away to pull them out of this area. Then re-engaged and established my threat before the DPS went ham. In any event, just a couple more pulls before the last boss. And from here out, it's pretty much smooth. Overall, with the use of auto attack, weaving in Maul when I have the rage, using Demoralizing Roar on larger pulls, and Swipe whenever I have an abundance of rage to use, we've handled the dungeon fairly well, held the mobs for the most part, and didn't really have any scary moments to speak of. Now, it wasn't the smoothest run, definitely have areas for improvement, but by taking a look back and identifying what those areas are, hopefully we'll know how to handle it in future situations and just get better and better at tanking. So maybe you can turn a healer at heart into a tank after all. So Bazlan goes down here. That's the end of the dungeon. GG boys, we did it. Super smooth, nice and safe. Good job all around. I'll admire my position on the DPS meter here. Happily take some light praise from our healer. Then we all go about our way. Overall, very successful run, I would say. So, I learned a little bit. Hope you learned a little bit as well. Let me know how your adventures in hardcore are going so far. And until next time, stay safe out there.